Okay. Ah,
Good
how's that?
morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to answer this Truth Bomb riff. My name is Patrick Lovell. I'm the producer with the $71 trillion truth, and it brings me great pleasure and honor to reconnect with my longtime friend, guy from high school years that I've known and seen periodically throughout the last many decades, but especially in social media and that sort of thing over the years. And my friend Alex Boynton is a cross between a Renaissance man. I'd say very gonzo in many ways, an artist in his own right, a very inquisitive and intelligent human being that has really seen a lot that this world has to offer. And what I want to do in this particular dialogue, similar to what I've been doing with other people around the country and people I know and don't know, and so on and so forth, is to give them an opportunity to express what they're seeing in the world and what it means and what their concerns are, and kind of a panoply of all of those things we're all dealing with, to then intersect with what I have behind me, which is the Clean New Deal, which I'm trying to hopefully pollinate at this great time of consequence, I should say. So, Alex, with that long ramp up, I want to say welcome, and it's so lovely to see you. How are you?
Thank you.
How are you on this day?
Well, I'm still slightly under 6 feet. I used to be taller.
Same.
Hard work and harder women have knocked me down to my current height.
Well said. Yes, and understood, man. Yeah, that's a good reason. I know gravity got me too. I'd say it's even more than that, but I'll tell you, I used to stand 6 foot and I was like a pretty powerful dude. Now I find, the gravity of the world, just like what we've seen throughout all of the wonderful sandstone in our beautiful state, you can become eroded.
Dude, I am eroding in real time.
So, with my long ramp up, I demonstrated that people are out there, in their own universe dealing with their own stuff. And I like to describe it as the four walls of our universe. I mean, everybody's got their, bills to pay, mouths to feed, family, all sorts of juxtaposition depending on where we're on the place of our journey, right? But
Maslow's hierarchy, basically.
yeah, yeah, right. And yet you have, your own come from. So let's start with, how are you kind of seeing the world at the moment? And I guess more specifically, our political fiasco led by the criminal in chief. And how are you responding, and kind of what are your concerns for all of the things that you find yourself in the midst in?
Oh, there are many. But like I think the root of the problem is clearly that we somehow either elected or did not elect a con man. I mean, when I was in college in the 80s and early 90s, like I made a number of friends from New York City, but I was aware of his antics long before because I'd go pick up milk or eggs for mom at the grocery store, normal stuff you do when you get your driver's license. And and he was always on some tabloid cover.
Yeah, true.
And all of my friends from New York were like, "Oh yeah, that dude he's terrible." Like cuz I mean, he was local news back then.
Absolutely.
And somehow now having destroyed everything he's ever touched,
Yep.
I feel like he's painting his masterpiece by destroying everything that anybody else has ever touched.
Beautiful, dude. Well said.
I mean, and for what? Like, hell, if I were some sort of dime store grifter from Staten Island or wherever the hell he grew up, right? And
Queen.
I inherited $500 million, I think I'd be pretty happy. Probably a lot of ski vacations, maybe go to Thailand, like not
For an extended period of time.
like I certainly wouldn't run for president. and and the crazy thing is, like, was he really elected?
No, I don't think so.
Nor do I. I mean, I guess we don't really have an option except to give the benefit of the doubt at this point because the barn is on fire and we need to
Well,
try and.
can I ask you a question on that? Because you elucidated something that I think is extremely important, and I'll just touch upon it, okay?
Yeah.
So we do know, we have forensic evidence that there was over 3.5 million votes that were thrown out because of ancient Jim Crow laws in swing states, particularly the South, okay? I know Georgia had an exorbitant amount of votes because of these. You can challenge it. There's a wonderful journalist by the name of Greg Palast who documented this, and he actually did a documentary that was EP'd by one of my favorites. I'm thinking of Jordan Belfort, which is Leonardo DiCaprio. Funny that I was thinking of Jordan Belfort. That was the Wolf of Wall Street. But anyway, so they document all this stuff. But I've also interacted with a bunch of people immediately after the election, and all of these like math engineers were approaching me and explaining to me that there were anomalies in places like New York, Georgia, and most notably Vegas, where there were like
Oh, Vegas, you don't say.
that ridiculous numbers in terms of voter turnout and how they turned out in certain time periods that were impossible, right? And yet none of this stuff went questioned. And I want to back this up just slightly, right? Think about, first of all, Kamala Harris gets this late nod to run for president because Biden obviously had that terrible performance where he looked like he was obviously, it's not Alzheimer's, but what happens when you get elderly and you get, so I probably have it myself.
I'm working up to it.
Right. But yeah, you can't retain information or think. Anyway, he had that horrible performance. But think about this, Alex, in terms of what I just also said. So the Supreme Court, roughly, yeah, I'm going to say 7 months before the election, had made that ungodly decision regarding Trump being literally the executive president, i.e., the king above the law that wasn't accountable while in office, right? Etch a sketching the Federal Reserve Act 13.3. They made that, excuse me, sorry, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, which basically says you can't run for office if you were involved with a insurrection. So they etch a sketch American history in the Civil War. They allowed by getting rid of that appeal of the Colorado to the Supreme Court, and all of these things are happening. Biden at that time not only was sitting on top of all of the Epstein files, right, which means that easily Kamala could have access to use against Trump, and ultimately they had supreme power. They could have been above the law and basically crushed Trump and the entire MAGA apparatus, which they didn't. Put those things together in your mind for me as you unpack, whether or not he stole the election. Again, part two.
Okay, so I mean, the Supreme Court is its own can of worms. I believe there are 9 worms in the can. And some of the worms might catch a fish, and some are probably dead inside.
True.
I mean, I don't understand. Like John Roberts, I would be nervous if he was a school teacher at my son's school, right? Like, the dude's creepy as hell.
Yeah.
Kavanaugh, like, what's up with that dude?
Kegerator, Kavanaugh.
Oh, and well, let's move from the Supreme Court, which would be an hour-long conversation of stupidity and incompetence. But let's move to the other kegerator, Pete Kegsbreath.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, what in is like what? Like how? Why? What like
But it's self-evident, brother. That's the point. They created this idiocracy of these sycophants, of these game show personality types that are to be voted off of the island, i.e., Christy Noam, and
They don't vote them off the island,
well,
which
not yeah,
therein lies the problem, right? I mean, I'm
yeah,
sorry,
no,
like Pete Hegseth, his own mom dissed him, right? Like, you know, my mom, like, she was not shy about telling me when she was disappointed with me, right? Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of part of the drill, but she also was completely honest. And then all of a sudden, Hegseth's mom like turns around and is like, "Oh yeah, he's a fucking patriot." No, the guy's a white supremacist. Look at his tattoos, right?
sure, absolutely.
I mean,
And a Christo nationalist fascist with Armageddon slash the rapture is his whole reason for being. They're having these meetings of like these Christo nationalists in the Pentagon.
and how crazy is that? Like, I mean, personally, I'm not an end times Christian kind of guy, right? Like, I'm more of a Sermon on the Mount sort of fellow, right? Like that I can get behind. The Old Testament is just lunacy and whatever, it's a book. Actually, it's a bunch of books that was cobbled together over thousands of years, and then a bunch of monks in the 1300s decided to make it a book, right? Like, and it governs like fully what, like a third of the population of the world? It's silly. Do you think like somebody like parted a flood so they could cross from Egypt to Israel? I mean, that's ludicrous, right? You don't turn water into wine. You turn grape juice into wine. That's how you make wine. So I'm told, right? There's yeast involved and whatnot. But like, I mean, so it just seems ludicrous to me that most of the world's problems are really caused by the three religions of Abraham:
Well, I don't know.
Islam,
Yeah,
Judaism, and Christianity.
but what about the God of money? Doesn't that kind of have some influence?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's its own God, dude.
Well, yeah.
But, like, he's more of a high concept God. It's the pretend idea that, I mean, and really, money inherently is not a bad idea, right? Because you can't always trade 12 goats for somebody's daughter or whatever. That is impractical. If you're trying to buy beer, like some money is a good thing. But what money has become is insane because it's more than a means to exchange for goods and services, right? Now it's this weird concept thing, and you've got all these hedge fund guys and whatever. Like,
Private equity, hedge fund, asset management, the rest of it that are getting paid. And this is the whole calibration of what I'm revealing. And I'll get to it, but it is the matrix, infinitum to your point. Yes, it is freaking insane for the game within the game within the game, bro.
oh, it truly is. Cool hat, by the way.
Peaky Blinders, baby. By the way, this is my grandfather's hat that he wore back in the 30s.
Dude, this is an old school Jack Mormon's hat.
Nice. That's right. And you play bass guitar for everybody out there. That's the reason why my friend Alex can like deliver such a steady beat, man. Dude, it's definitely in your blood. I can feel it.
Playing bass guitar is its own philosophical adventure, right? Because if you're really a bass player, what you rejoice in is that you're secretly in control of everything and nobody knows you're there.
Right on, dude. Right on.
I mean, like, I lack the hair to be a guitar hero or the stage panache. I like standing right next to the drummer, and we're gonna lock some shit down.
Fucking
That's the job.
hell yeah, bro.
Okay, so let's. Here's what I view as the pinnacle and present irresponsibility of our country, right? We underfund education. Like, and to me, I can't think of anything more important than teachers. And yet, you can make more as a janitor than you can as a teacher. And teachers have to get a certificate and often a master's degree and all sorts of shit. And we don't have free education here in America because apparently, like every other commodity, it shouldn't be free, right? Like, I
Well,
mean,
the
if think
idea
of,
is that you're taking loans and going towards a career that's going to pay off, and you're going to have long storied happy life and sustainability and opportunity for you and the people in your world, right? I.e., your family. But what do we see? Heavy, heavy debt burden for really a jobs market that is now being gobbled up by AI, let alone everything that's happened before. This is a real freaking crisis moment, is it not?
oh, absolutely. I mean, AI, it's all in the title. It's artificial intelligence. Intelligence comes from thought, humans, right? Not algorithms. I mean, Aristotle was not an app, right? Like Plato's Republic was not written by Chat GBT or whatever, right? Like I mean,
Or the cave. Yeah. Although,
oh, the metaphor of the cave is fucking, I think, more relevant than ever before,
it is,
really.
it's what we are. That's the four walls of our construction that I always talk about. But yeah,
Oh, dude, I mean, I watch The Shadows all day.
dude, you are a professional. I think you found a new, hopefully a platform. You need to be a recurring guest on this because you are absolutely on point and brilliant. By the way, dude, I love your freaking vibe here, man. But look, let's take a look. Okay, education. I don't want to lead you because you're on your path, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
Look,
no, it's a discussion, right? I mean,
the crisis moment for me though, and this is what we're going to get to, in the second half of our dialogue, but where you're going, and I love how you talk about education first, because really, I'd say the biggest crisis is the misinformation and the lies, particularly affecting our disaffected youth post COVID. And I experienced this with a 21-year-old son who's gone through a divorce and really tough stuff with just this crazy fucking world. When you look at it, it's like, how would you like to be 21 in a world that looks like it's collapsing before your eyes? You
well,
know,
I have a 22-year-old son, and thankfully he inherited the family sense of humor because shit is grim. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, but if you can't laugh, what then? To borrow a phrase from one of my favorite films, Shallow Grave, back in the late '90s, if you might remember that film. But if you can't trust your friends, what then? So if you can't trust the institutions, what then? See, what we've seen is a calamitous knee bend to the capitulation of the people with the money that have distorted everything in this universe of corruption that barely people are barely seeing now, but more than ever before because Trump is doing it so transparently. The $1 billion plus that he's looted in the first year because of crypto and all of these gold state mechanisms and everything else, not to mention, I mean, this far exceeds anything he did in Trump University, but it is on par
well,
with
okay,
anything he did in real estate. Go ahead.
let's look at this, right? Like, I mean, the guy had a rather calamitous, let us call it, real estate career. I mean, I've never owned a casino personally, right? And I don't really like to gamble because the money that I have, I actually earned. And so I'm not going to, blow it all on a game of three card Monte or whatever. But like, I mean, some, I'm assuming if I somehow came in possession of a casino, that seems like a solid business proposition.
That's why
You
they say
sell
a
cheap
house
drinks,
wins.
dude. You sell cheap drinks. You have a free buffet, and everybody's at the table, and the house makes 5%, like or whatever the margin is. I mean, I guess it's pretty regulated, but somehow he bankrupted six of them. Dude, I worked on a Bon Jovi DVD in Atlantic City, New Jersey, right? And we were at the Borgata, which is the Bellagio of the East Coast. It's probably not open now. But like walking the streets of Atlantic City, New Jersey, was fully depressing.
I've been there and I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it was like
hung out, man.
it's the boulevard of broken dreams.
Right.
And now even Vegas doesn't work.
Yeah. It's just all for super rich and all the other fucking $2 slots. I mean, $2 tables have disappeared, man.
Dude, I mean, if Vegas couldn't keep it together, it's a mob generated money factory. Like, how hard is it?
Right.
I like, okay, all right, people like to gamble, throw some money on the slots. I mean, my dad was a great gambler. My mom, not so much. So, but my grandfather was a card dealer. Like, that's what he did before he like became the director of Salt Lake Transportation and owned the cab companies and Gray Line bus tours and Avis Rent-A-Cars and whatever, right?
Right on, dude.
But when he got out of college, he went to Vegas and was a card dealer. So my dad learned a lot from
Wow.
his old man
Right on.
about how to play cards.
Hell yeah.
I didn't get that gene. I'm a backgammon player.
I love backgammon, by the way.
Dude, some skill, some luck. Yeah, I play it a lot with my son. But like because I think if you play backgammon, you're kind of a fatalist in a sense. Because really all the best laid plans of mice and men can suddenly turn to dust in the roll of a dice. Like
Yeah. Amen, dude.
yeah, so sorry I'm so up front in the screen. I just don't have a fancy phone holder thing.
The impact is tremendous.
Well, okay. So anyway, when my parents were dating before I was born, they were in Vegas, right? And my mom went and like dropped a couple of rolls in quarters into the slot machines and ended up kind of drunk and lost all the money, right? My dad went and played poker and he was kicking ass. And I think five card stud was his game. And so he got invited to smaller and smaller rooms and kept taking everyone's money. And so finally he was up like 40 grand. And he just cashed his chips and was like, peace out, and went to the room.
Right on.
And so he passed out and the whole bed was covered with money, right? Because he was trying to count all of his dig. But he'd also been doing some drinking, and so he passed out. And so mom gets back to the room
Sees
after
all the
hemorrhaging
money.
quarters,
Yeah.
and she thought it was a mob hit. She thought he was dead.
But the money's still there.
Right, right. Well, and that's what he pointed out when he woke up. He's like, no. And that was the first down payment for a house for our family.
Oh, that's hilarious. I thought you were going to say that's how you were conceived. In a bed of money, dude.
Perhaps. I don't know. I was not there for the occasion. I became a zygote, like, and that was it. And then I turned into a fetus, and then I somehow was born, and that was wild. I mean, childbirth is craziness, but hell, it's been going on for millions of years, so apparently it works out.
Okay, but the house. So you had the down payment for the house based on freaking the 5 card stud, which is a great story, man.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's so crazy. Like, most people were like, oh, yeah, he worked at a car dealership for decades and like hard work and whatever, like my dad. I mean, I don't think the guy worked a day in his life, but somehow he made it work, which is a different concept.
Right on.
I mean, he was not a rapacious capitalist by any sense of the imagination, right? And both my parents got crushed in the real estate fiasco in the 80s because all of a sudden everybody wanted to be a real estate agent, right? And then mom went back to working as a medical administrator, which was her job, and she was good at it. She coordinated cancer research groups worldwide.
Wow.
And then my dad, when I was little, he did pretty well owning travel agencies. But then a few bad ski seasons in the 70s turned his dreams to dust.
Oh, man.
So he became a real estate guy, and they both sucked at that. Mom went back to her day job, right? And dad never really figured it out after that. Like, he had lots of ideas, but manifesting them was not his bailiwick.
Timing, baby.
Well, I mean, I've done my I've dabbled in entrepreneurship and it sucked. I wasn't good at it, like
Not easy, baby.
no. No, I gave it a whack and failed, and I picked up what remaining chips I had off the table and went away. I was like, all right, I'll just go back to working for movie companies because I know how to do that.
Right. You have a skill,
Uh, a couple of them, but
obviously, right?
I mean, and it's a weird skill, and like explaining it to people has been confusing. Like, I'm the guy that makes shadows. This may seem unimportant to you, but that's how you make a movie. Like, lighting should look natural, which takes a huge amount of work to
Absolutely.
make it look natural.
Yep.
You just can't puke light at people and hope for the best. Like, no, it's a like, I mean, there's fucking 3 departments that think about that.
Absolutely.
You got camera, they're concerned with it because they're looking through the lens, and that looks weird. That's a problem. And then you've got the electricians, so they add light, and then we, the grips, remove it,
Right.
or parts of it anyway. Like,
Yeah.
It's a dance. It's like being in a rock band. Like everybody's
Absolutely.
got a job, you know?
Beautiful, man. Ah, there you go, baby. That's what I do every time I get off the slopes, man.
Dude, I have to say that PBR is like such an iconic American company. They make cheap, solid beer, and you can afford it when you're poor, which is nice.
I actually like it. I always have. And I love the Godzilla can, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah, those are cool. The current one I'm rocking is not one of the Godzilla ones, but I've had a few of those. And what is it like? Peter must die or
Yeah.
something on the
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
So let me turn this because I want to get to this next evolution of this dialogue. But look, dude, we've got the No Kings rally coming up on Saturday. Millions of people are going to come to the streets, but they're going to come to the streets in a way that, and I'm not saying but as this is a negative thing, it's absolutely imperative. But at the same time, I've been a part of now four of these since last spring. I've spoken at two, and I see on the signs some of the most brilliant assessments and the most clever depictions. We've got an incredibly talented, visionary, artistic group of people that are a part of our side that are anti MAGA, of course. And they know systems and they know what's wrong and they know how to express them in a panoply of incredible voices in this ocean of people yearning for a better system, yearning for something that's not this. But I do have one issue, and there's a reason this happens in the, shall we say, organization of movements and where we are. Now, because I've been on the phone calls every week with Indivisible on occasion, I should say at periods of time, blah, blah, blah. I know what
Right.
the inside scoop is from the organizers, from the people, Ezra Levin, he's been all over mainstream media. Recently, he was on Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell, giving all the people all the information. It's great information. And his wife, Leah Greenberg, and they're brilliant technocrats. So when I went to college, I studied political science. And when you come out of political science, particularly if you get a master's, you go work for campaigns and you do all of the due diligence and the political calculus and everything else to get the data to be able to inform the candidates what works, what doesn't work, how it works. They're political consultants, they're intermediaries. But what we've seen over the course of our lifetime is an increase of the billionaire class funding elections. So here are these technocrats that are good meaning, and they had backing initially from the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, which is part and parcel to those that basically slammed Bernie Sanders' opportunity short the last four times he was in the mix, or three times.
Which was a calamity.
Right. And so they are well-meaning, relatively young. We've got to be able to engage and resist. And here's the meaningful way of organizing. But here's the problem: nobody has elicited a plan concurrent the corruption that we're in the midst of. Now, you and I should talk about your most important issues now, and I want you to tell me what you mentioned your hierarchy starting with education, but I wonder if you can maybe just give me a few thoughts about what's important to you and then ultimately what your frustrations and concerns are.
Okay. So education is at the top of the list because, I mean, you look at a country like Finland, right? And I mean, they pay teachers in the same way we pay doctors and lawyers, right? To be a teacher it's not a fallback thing in Finland.
No, it's put up there as one of the most important aspects of society, which you just
Well, and why shouldn't it be? Like,
absolutely
who is more important than the people who spend the other half of the day with your kids?
right. Creating
Teaching them how
critical.
to read, teaching them how to do math, teaching them that
Amen. Amen.
when you dissect a frog, it sucks and it smells like formaldehyde. I mean, you learn a lot in school. And
Absolutely.
I was blessed with really good teachers.
That's right.
But back when you and I were in school, like teachers were paid well enough to buy a home and
Absolutely.
raise a family.
Yeah.
Now, They're not. And
That's by design.
to me, that's inconceivable.
Well, hey, wait a second. Let's think about this just for a corollary, right? The head of the Department of Education is Linda McMahon, whose husband is Jim McMahon, who created the All Star Wrestling Federation, that who's most well known in his salacious capacity of dropping dookies on prostitutes' chests. This, his wife, who is also a billionaire, is director of education. So anyway, just a sidebar, but you're right.
No, no, but I mean, that I think is indicative of the larger problem at hand.
Right, absolutely.
Because we don't take education seriously in this country, which is tragic. Because, I mean, we're in the richest country in the world, right? Like, never has there been a society as well funded as we are. I mean, we can go into the reasons for that. Like, we stole an entire continent from a bunch of peaceful people and then threw them on reservations. And so we get it all.
Right. And
Not like, as Donald Rumsfeld put it, old Europe, right? Like, we wouldn't want to be like old Europe, but it's like, yeah, because those guys have been fighting for generations with each other.
Mhm.
And mostly over nothing, like religion or, land or what have you. But like,
Power.
yeah, I mean, because all those things represent power at some level. And then if you look east to China, right? I mean, they've certainly had their historical hiccups for sure. Like Mao's revolution was not a good thing for a lot of people. Like
26 million dead.
yeah, I mean, there were casualties, but but the Chinese are smart people. I mean, they were inventing like gunpowder and printing presses when our ancestors were beating each other with sticks, right?
Absolutely.
And you look at China now, and they're pretty fucking focused on how to get ahead,
That's right.
right? And we
As a
are
society,
trying,
not for the oligarchs, as a society, yes.
right? And we are apparently unable to move on beyond trying to figure out who actually has the Epstein files.
Right.
I mean, how weird is that?
It's so weird. It's defies imagination because it's so obvious. It's eyes wide shut. So it's Stanley Kubrick's 1999 film of a bunch of rich people that get involved with a high blackmail situation where everybody's caught by the same crosshairs, so they can't basically expose the other, and so yet they're all inside this game. Look, I did a truth bomb on that. I want to just use that as a quick corollary, because here's the one thing I want you to put into your Epstein class scenario as you're talking about education, right? And Epstein and how stupid it all is. Look, for those who are like, yeah, it's all about Trump and Pam Bondi, which is a ludicrous situation.
Oh,
This has been going on for 4 decades, or excuse me, 4 administrations, right? Probably Bush too was the ultimate reason Epstein was able to establish and get away with everything he did. And the composite between the billionaire class, intelligence, all of the matrix of the financialization, to your point, like you said earlier about it's beyond comprehension. They're all the same team, bro. They're
oh
all
yeah.
so that's
No, I mean, you can put a D or an R in front of your name, but really they should just all be like M for money.
yeah. And bend over. How about that? BOM. Bend over money. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, frankly, okay, so that moves me to my next point. There should be like Citizens United was the most tragic Supreme Court decision ever made.
Definitely one of them.
Well, and that it's in an illustrious history of poor decisions throughout
Absolutely.
the Supreme Court's history, right? Like,
Yeah. That
Um,
always has the backs of the freaking owners, though. That's the thing, man. When you think back to Plessy versus Ferguson, and well, what am I thinking of? What was the worst decision in terms of the Civil War? I can't think of the name of it at the moment. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah,
um,
the point is,
yeah.
the Supreme Court's always, for the most part, except for its in our youth with the civil rights movement, has been on the side of the ownership class.
Well, and if you look at the Supreme Court justices we have now, it's a gong show. It's like the Muppet Show, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
It's tragic, and too much is dependent upon those people, and they seem incapable of doing their jobs.
Oh, wait a second. I bear to differ. They're doing their jobs for the billionaire class that backdoored several $1 billion over the course of the last many years, especially through Leonard Leo and the whole conservative Catholic. What is it called? The guys that we saw in.
Oh, that guy! Holy moly!
Did you ever see the movie that God that Imagine Entertainment did that was about the Dan Brown novel called oh my God, where he was figuring out all of these different symbology. This was only back in the early 2000s, but the Dan Brown novel was in the 90s. The movie will come back to me, but there's a sect of Opus Dei, is what I'm trying to get to, that these guys would
Yeah, flagellate
yeah,
and right,
to be
like you
super,
do.
super violent and all that sort of thing, because that's the discipline of control and the kind of the fascist. Opus Dei is what basically has been funneling billions of dollars through the literal backdoor of the Supreme Court. That's what got his
Yeah,
jobs, yes, among other things.
I mean, we've got what Amy Barnett,
Comey Barrett.
corn dog or whatever her name is, and Brett Kavanaugh and John Roberts.
They're all
I
Catholic,
mean,
actually. Yes.
there's a few winners in there. There's
They're
Sonia,
also
and
Catholic. Yeah, so do my owners Catholic as well, by the way.
well, I mean, I know a lot of Catholics that I'm rather fond of.
Same.
I personally, I was raised Episcopalian, which is we're Catholics that you don't really even have to show up, right? But if you do on a Sunday morning, we got all this showbiz pizzazz, and you drink a little wine, you eat a stale cracker, and you watch everybody marches around with incense snifters and whatnot, right? But if you look at the Episcopal Church, it was Henry VIII
Right.
saying, okay, I want to get a divorce,
Yep.
which is reasonable. I got divorced myself, like, and I did for good reason, and like, and then maybe we shouldn't send all of our treasure to Rome so that the Pope can get some new shoes or whatever, right? So then you have the Episcopalian Church, but I'm glad I grew up Episcopal because we were what you call Christmas and Easter Episcopalians. Those were the two times we went to church. Occasionally, I would end up going to church if I spent the night at my cousin's house because her mom was be to church on time sort of Episcopalian, which is a different jam, right? But my dad was like, I show up at Christmas to find my ski buddies, and I show up at Easter to find my golf buddies. And that was church in my family, which seemed pretty reasonable to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, it was low impact, low effort. Drop $10 in the collection plate or what have you because it's important to tip. But but that was about it, right? Like, and then like, yeah, like the Catholic Church is insane. Have you read Umberto Eco's Name of the Rose?
No, but what a beautiful title.
Oh, dude. I mean, it's a great movie starring Sean Connery, but the book is jaw dropping. So it takes place in a 14th century monastery somewhere in Italy, right? And the whole thing is centered around, should knowledge be hoarded, or is it okay for knowledge to be dispersed, right? Because if you look at feudalism and the whole dark ages of Europe, the peasants didn't read. I mean, there was no printing press until Gutenberg came along. So if there was a document, it meant a monk wrote down a copy of that document
That's right.
by hand
Yeah.
in a drafty ass monastery somewhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And
By the way, I was thinking of Da Vinci Code. You reminded me of it when you were
oh,
talking.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a great show and great book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but to your point though, the look, and I'm going to throw in another parable and also a metaphor for you to consider in this context, right? So Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel and the depths of the analysis of the biblical to be able to maybe shine some humanism into it as well. Maybe that's a stretch, but I think most art critics would consider that to be Michelangelo's gift, among other things, in terms of his frescoes. But where you're going with this, on top of the religious sort of, you know, play in humanity, shall we say, as it relates to this control of this section of the Catholic Church that I was talking about with Opus Dei and everything else, and its influence in the Supreme Court. What I'd like to hear you say as we move on, because I think what I've decided to do, if you're going to be up for it, you got to be a reoccurring character on this Truth Bomb because your brilliance is really something to behold, man. I
Dude,
love
I'm just a monkey with car keys. Come on.
yeah, but no, but seriously, I love your satire, but you've got a great sense of it, man. But here's what I want to hear you tell me, right? Because you're going through your hierarchy of what the problem is. We went from education, now we got some sort of religion, but we're in this midst of no kings coming up. Where
Okay, so now let's go to my third point.
okay,
Media consolidation. Right? Like, I mean, when we were young, the Salt Lake Tribune was owned by the McCarthy family. And it was interesting because when I ended up moving to Atlanta to go play bass guitar in a rock band, I was like, yeah, I'm going to move to a big ass city with cool news, right? Because I mean, I think in Utah we're generally trained to think that it sucks, right? But the Salt Lake Tribune was a great paper. I mean, I read it every day. Like it was dropped off on the porch and it was good journalism. Like you actually, and then I moved to Atlanta and they had the Journal Constitution, right? Their paper, their daily rag. And it was just inane. It was USA Today without a colorful banner, right? They had more of a gothic, font used and it looked a little classier. But I would read the paper in Atlanta and I was like, man, I don't know how good I had it. But sometimes you have to step in the shit to smell it.
well, so true. But let me point that out too. So I came from Houston, Texas, originally before I moved to
Okay.
Oklahoma City. And Houston had tremendous journalism in the Houston Post and the Houston Chronicle. Okay, back in the '80s, well, '70s at that time, and then '80s I moved to Salt Lake. What I discovered in Salt Lake was the most amazing thing for somebody from the outside because my parents decided to relocate to Utah because my dad was a victim of the merger and acquisition because he's an attorney in the oil and gas business, and that was the '80s of that time period. And then
Good times.
he had a couple of job offers, and my mom went to high school in Switzerland, so she loved skiing. And my mom was like, let's go try Salt Lake City out because of the mountains, right? So my dad becomes this principal attorney and then later general counsel at then what was Questar. But ultimately, what I discovered initially through the likes of you and many, many others in our group that I think really furthers the notion of the power of the Salt Lake Tribune. Salt Lake City also had a cadre of Democratic mayors for a long time, and a sort of a progressive underground in a city that overall in a state was a religious sort of whatever you want to constitute your description of the
Dude, it's the only functioning theocracy in America.
interesting, but it certainly does get shit done. There's no question about it, and they both.
Dude, say what you will, but Mormons aren't sitting around drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon. They're getting it done,
No,
right? Like,
they get it done. There's no question about it, right? But the point that I'm trying to make, based on the journalism, is that there was always a anti conformity to there was an independent vibe that blew my mind, whether it was the punk rock scene to what you're talking about to literally the progressive sort of in context to the predominant religion. There was always a very organized and structured independent voice in the state, which always I really was grateful for.
well, it was a reaction.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, I think one of my favorite quotes from my dad, we were sitting around one night. I think I was, 14 or 15, right? And we're at dinner. And like my parents were the kinds of people that talked about politics at the dinner table because they thought it was important. It was considered impolite in many circles to discuss politics or religion. And we didn't talk much about religion because we weren't particularly religious.
Right on.
So it was more interesting as in like an exercise in anthropology. Like, wow, there's all these people that are terrified of their imaginary friend. Like, what a weird concept. Because we were just like, all right, you're born, you try and make money, you grow old, and you die. Like that's the cycle of life. Like it's pretty cut and dried and straightforward, right? I mean, so yeah, growing up in Utah was strange, but what my dad said to me that has always stuck with me is he goes, son, I'm going to tell you one thing. And he would always tell me one thing, and then he would tell me another thing, right? So I was like, oh, it's another thing. But but he looked at me and he goes, here's the thing. He's like, Democrats in Utah would be Republicans anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
He's like, but Republicans would be locked up anywhere else in the country.
As we've seen the carnage of that in the MAGA movement.
Dude, we've got Mike Lee,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, come on, that guy. And then you've got like that weird conehead uh, governor of ours.
Yeah. Cox.
Oh,
Conehead.
dude. I mean,
Mr. Charlie Kirk. Oh, hey, I've got the national spotlight. We need to all get along and like, oh yeah, hey, hey, MAGA, come buy our open lands and drill and finance and
right.
this, that, and yeah.
And that was the other benefit of growing up in Utah was the place is so mind-numbingly beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, we have it all. Like,
Oh yeah.
are you into fishing? Cool, we got that. Like, are you a desert rat? That was sort of my subsect.
Same.
Um, Snowboarding, skiing.
MAGA.
That was a huge part of my life. I mean, both my parents were avid skiers, and so I don't remember learning how to ski.
It just was who you were from the beginning. Same, and my son and all the rest. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, same with my boy. I mean, he was put on skis at 3. And I don't remember much from when I was 3.
Right.
But by the time I was 5, and all of a sudden memories started collecting, and like I was already a pretty decent skier, because it was all day, every day in the winter.
Damn
My
straight.
dad would take me out of school and on powder days because he had a travel agency in Park City when I was young.
Right on.
And so we had season, like back in those days, if you were a travel agent, you and your family had season passes everywhere,
Right.
which was a cool way to grow up. And it was weird when that went away because all of a sudden I think,
Because it's like, oh, wait a second, that
oh,
costs a lot of money, man.
right. And so, yeah, like I would get taken out of school on powder days because dad would just drop me off at Park City on his way to work at his travel agency. And then he'd pick me up at 4 when the lifts closed.
Right on, dude.
So, like, all the lifties knew me, right?
Yeah,
Because I was the tiny kid that was apparently unattended.
yeah. Dude, that's so rad. Like one thing I do want to convey to because I do have a national audience, like for me, I'm 57 years old. I still get on the mountain 3 days a week. We've had the worst winter of all time, but I still do it because it's like for me, it's my zen and it's where I actually think. And it's like a cross between, where people in cities would go work out and go to the gym and take the time to do that. I can do that because it's relatively close and I could just be in and out of there quick. But at the same time, there is no I've traveled around the world. I've lived in a lot of great places. I've lived in beautiful places, incredibly smart and innovative and dynamic places, but none offer the lifestyle to do what you and I are talking about. And it becomes your DNA. And so when you have that grounded, you have a perspective that a lot of people don't have because we do see seasons, we do see erosion, we do see nature, and we see man's impact on it.
Absolutely. And yeah, when I've lived in other places like Atlanta or LA or whatever, I'm like, my God, these people's lives are so hollow that they're concerned about what kind of shoes they're going to buy.
Right.
Like, and I too, like, am careful about shoes. They're an important tool. I'm not some guy that walks around barefoot or whatever. I consider shoes an important part of the equation in my daily. A good hoodie is key. I wear a hat. That way, if a bird was going to shit on my head, it it happens on the hat, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's pragmatic.
dude, I'm pretty much a total pragmatist. Like,
I love it, dude. But here's the thing, and I don't want to cut. I could talk to you all day, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this a T on this because we got to close this up today because I got stuff to do, you got stuff to do, or maybe you don't. But at the same time, the
oh
bottom
no, I always have stuff to do. We all.
everybody has stuff to do. But the bottom line is you've identified three. Well, and I'm sure there's so many more. But let me just recalibrate this because I want to introduce you to the Clean New Deal behind me. And I want to get your reaction to this based on some things that I think you could be somewhat of a surrogate for what millions of people are thinking. And many people who's just discovering you are like, Jesus, I think like Alex. He's got a very a sense of
Makes me nervous.
well, a sense of humor is one thing, but it's just like the Renaissance sort of approach, and also the narrative to be able to understand history and society and way things work and the pragmatic aspect of what really impacts us all. You identified three things, and the order was education, it was religion, and it was media. So all of those, when I hear that, I think of society. I think of hierarchy, I think of information, I think of interaction. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Well, yeah, because the it is easy to control ignorance. And our education is not designed to really educate. They want workers, right? And that's the baseline for I think where we're at,
Yeah, absolutely.
which
What like
is
what
why I
Carlin said.
hemorrhage tens of thousands of dollars to send my son to private school.
Right. And then everything that goes with that, with job opportunities that are being limited, and same with the livability situations, i.e., the affordability crisis, and then the debt and everything else. But then ultimately, like you and I discussed a couple of days ago, there is no job security. You could be a master's or an MBA, this, that, and the other. You could work for 20, 30 years being at the top of your game, and then suddenly you're replaced by AI. That's reality. Or you could be somebody like yourself who's got incredible skills on the set of a film that took years to be able to apprentice and get to the point that you could work at the highest levels of production at a way that the production needs to come in on budget and do all the right things, but yet you can be expendable, right? But
Oh, and have been.
and have been.
I mean, like literally now it's all, oh, we'll fix it in post or whatever.
Right,
Like the ways that I learned to light a film set were specific to film stock. So you needed X number of lumens for this class of film. And then the camera assistants were equally nervous because you flash a roll and you just lost half a day.
right,
But now it's all on a card.
right.
So, I mean, what we're doing is technology is making us irrelevant.
Right, right. Absolutely. Now, let me ask you a question though, having experienced that and seeing it with friends, family, and interpersonal scenarios, I'm sure throughout your life, how do you react to this statement? Because this is the question I promulgated in my first documentary film, Forward 13, Waking Up the American Dream. I postulated, I'm not expendable. Chances are you're not either. How do you respond to that?
Um, I like to think that I'm a good dad, which so then I'm not expendable. But I mean, otherwise, like other than moments like this or hanging out and having a beer, at some bar talking philosophy with some other egghead, right? Like, I mean, I'm not building the Glen Canyon Dam, right? Like, I'm not that guy. I'm not, I didn't invent a cool new aircraft. I haven't, the things I've done in life is pretty much confined largely to entertainment of one form or another. Whether or not as a painter, here's something cool to put on your wall, or making movies, here's something to entertain you while you smoke weed at 10 o'clock at night and you're watching cable, right? Or as a musician, for the next 3 hours, we're going to rock out. So, no, I mean, I have given what gifts I can to the world, but I'm certainly not indispensable.
I'm gonna.
But wasn't
I beg to disagree, but let me just.
no, no, okay, wait. Let me finish with
Sure.
this.
Sure.
I think it was Charles de Gaulle who said, the graveyards are filled with indispensable men.
Fair enough. But look, here's my composite, okay? And I want to address that because I think what you've identified is so profound to me from the standpoint of sociology, right? Again, religion, education, sorry, let's go education, religion, and then media, all of which societal bounds, of which constitute power. And now we're in this really dramatic nightmare of a James Cameron movie gone afoul because James Cameron never had a character like the Mad Magazine Mad King idiot in chief who literally is so stupid he has pronounced things every other day that are more ridiculously stupid. But this is what's so funny about the cave, Plato's cave, and everything else, the corollary. If he's that stupid and he's that
And
insane,
he is.
how is he in charge getting billions of dollars where nobody can stop him, that he could destroy the world with actually no pushback? Who is stupid, him or us, right? Now, it's a rhetorical question because when people pretend that they are, let's say, not touched by this situation or any situation that preceded it, and they live in a bubble or a vacuum, they make everybody else expendable from this perspective. The system itself is built on the people being the ultimate backstop. That means an informed populace. That means that can hold power to account because the founders, for whatever their flaws, and nobody on this side of the fence, meaning everybody I interact with, ever pretends that the founders were the perfect beings and the Constitution was perfect. The notion was in order to form a more perfect union because it's a great system if you can keep it, i.e., Ben Franklin and the rest of them. But the long and
Indeed.
short of it is because absolute power corrupts absolutely, that we've known for literally centuries, if not a millennia. And then we also understood from 17th century Bastiat during the time of imperialism that that when a group of men discover plunder, they create a legal code to authorize it and a moral code to glorify it. So within that context, I love your humility. I love the point that you're a good father. That to me is absolutely extraordinary, the inspiration, everything else. But we're flesh and blood. We're human. We're not AI. Again, to your point about artificial intelligence. And my systemic ideology is nobody is expendable. Okay. My North Star is the Holocaust, right? Never again from a standpoint of mass humanity. And yet here we are post Gaza and everything else, where millions of people have been wiped out for the last 24 years in a global war that many people in the United States don't even effectuate as a global war because they never had to serve, right? But it's come back to get us. What we've had in this situation is we've got ICE, which a lot of is constituted of these returned mercenaries from Blackwater and these guys that have fought for 20 years that are basically really good at ripping.
And a bunch of January 6th guys and
Yes,
whatever. Right.
right. And they're paid for by billionaires to do what? To reconstitute basically all of which on the eve of the 250th anniversary of the ultimate enlightenment, the American Revolution, because of separation of powers, Bill of Rights, and the Constitution, and the notion of the fourth estate, to your point, right? So I'm going to move into this section because I want to share my screen and I want to walk you through this and I want to get your reaction to it. But on the point that let's see here, the point that everybody's expendable, yeah, but they're not. Okay, some have more impact than others, but it depends on where the impact is. Like you said about Degas, I mean, how many millions of people, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, cannot survive without somebody in their family being a mentor or somebody that they can lean on? And we're there for each other. So expendable to me is like when your country makes you expendable, it's your
Duty.
responsibility, duty to make the tyranny expendable. That's my whole point and has been from the very beginning. I'm not expendable, but I know who is. And I'll explain to you why. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here to respond to. I make the proclamation that this is a declaration, the Clean New Deal, to reboot the American dream. Now, if you're cynical and the American dream's bullshit for some people, this, that, and the other, I understand. I want to hear you say that, but I'm going to make these proclamations, and I want to hear how you respond to it, and I want to dialogue on a minute, and then I'm going to introduce you to the precepts of the Clean New Deal. So I say we don't live in a democracy. What about you?
No, we live in a cacistocracy or whatever, however you say that, cacistocracy.
Yeah, it's theft.
It's the rule of the stupid. But here's the thing: the stupid are useful. I mean, Donald Trump is not smart enough to dismantle the nation by himself,
No,
right?
wag the dog, baby.
I mean, yeah, no, but he's the perfect tool for his handlers.
Amen. Which is the billionaire class, which, as it turns out, is
Right.
which is the Epstein class. So Now I'm gonna throw you a humding, and I'm really curious to see how you respond to this. I say I proclamate, and this is all, by the way, my friends out there, this is from me spending years in the trenches as a documentary filmmaker, working with some of the brightest people and professionals in the entire hierarchy of whatever their profession is, be it the law, economics, and other scenarios, that have given me this insight. But it came from millions of dollars of resources to be able to actually do that. I'm not reaching into my ass, pulling this out and giving you hyperbole, because this is coming from that position. But I want everybody to challenge me when they think they need to. So I say we don't function as a capitalistic system. How do you respond to that?
No, I mean, the idea of a capitalistic system is maybe you have a bunch of goats, right? And then you can trade some of your goats for, a bride for your son or what have you, right? Or something. Or you invent a widget and you figure out how to manufacture your widget and patent it and you sell it. That is functioning capitalism, right?
Or I might add, see a need, fill a need, right? So maybe somebody's got an idea to improve something that already exists. Would you say that's kind of part of the process, or at least in terms of what we think of our system?
Dude, socks have heels now. I mean, progress is real,
Amen, dude. Okay.
right? Like, I mean, it's humans are incredibly intelligent and innovative, but they're also venal and greedy. And so it's a balancing act between that. Like
Right.
on one hand, you have, say, a writer like Annie Dillard. Have you read her work?
I'm not familiar with Annie Dillard. No.
Oh, dude, read Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. It's
Right on.
absolutely poetic. Or my personal favorite, Wallace Stegner, who
I do know Wallace Stegner.
I did. So we're fraternity brothers, oddly enough.
Right on.
And so I got to meet him when I was like 19 or 20 living in LA. He was doing a book signing at one of our sister stores in La Jolla. So I took the day off and I was like, I'm going to go meet Wallace Stegner. And it was the coolest experience because so I waited at the end of the line because all the, biddies from Southern California were getting their books signed, right? And I actually wanted to fucking have a minute to talk to him. So I kind of hung back. And then finally, as things were winding down, I walked up and I was like, dude, I am a Sigma Nu from the University of Utah. But also, my grandparents introduced me to your books. And luckily, I had an aunt who was a bookseller. So, like, I didn't buy books when I was a kid, they'd just arrive at the house because my aunt owned a bookstore and she'd be like, oh, yeah, he's the kid that reads. So let's send him a book, right? So, yeah, like every, few weeks or so, I would get a plain, like, brown paper bag wrapped parcel and it was a book. And so that's how I got introduced to Wallace Stegner.
Right on.
And he had done book signings at my aunt's store. And so we're sitting there chatting, and the manager of Hunter's Books, where this book signing was happening, came up and she goes, young man, Mr. Stegner is a very busy man, and you're taking up his time. And he looked at her and he said, actually, I am talking to this young man.
Right on.
So who's wasting whose time here?
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a cool moment. I mean, his nonfiction is incredible. Have you read Beyond the 100th Meridian?
Pieces of it, and I think y- yeah, but again, what I want to do is I want to try to bring you back in because like we could talk all day about this, but I got to jump on a couple of things. I want to get through this, but Wallace Stegner was brought up in your mind because I brought up the idea that we don't function as a capitalist system. I think that was the corollary.
Right. Because he watched it all go bad with his dad,
Okay,
and he writes about it in some of his work.
right on.
And yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Capitalism, like religion or any other ideology, is good on paper, but it's how people practice it that is important.
That's right. That's right. Because if you
I
look,
mean, if you are, say, a religious person, right? That does not make you bad in my book, right?
absolutely.
It just means that that's your thing. Personally, I enjoy a good book like The Next Guy, right? But I'm still just convinced that we're apes.
The soundtrack to 2001: A Space Odyssey, History of the World, Mel Brooks version went through my mind. Do you remember when all the apes were going dun dun dun, dun and then they ended up on their backs masturbating?
And I mean, yeah, like, yeah, we're just apes, and but we're apes that figured out how to do some other things. And somewhere along the line, we lost most of our body hair.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of systems, though, capitalism, to me, for example, is a catch-all, but it's also this thing at the moment, especially those who consider themselves socialists, or maybe they go to Marxism and all of these types of things. And I've learned a lot of Marxists today have not read Das Kapital, the book three, which is a huge part of the classical economics, right? And I've been able to, kind of stick my toe in it. But the long and the short of it is they were all classical economists, and they're trying to sort out ultimately what you just have really brought to the fore throughout the whole thing is human sort of instinct and what we're capable of. And the only thing that reins us in, even though it's still flawed, is the law when you have accountability, which brings us back to the whole nature of this. And so capitalism, I say, is we're not capitalists. But again, this isn't coming from my perception. From what I'm endeavoring and what I'm setting forth is a theory. What I have is information that proves that we backstopped with tens of trillions of dollars to a financial class to float them for a global racketeering scheme that came out of my work. That's what I was endeavoring for the past 14 years. And I went
Yeah.
inside the belly of the beast to discover what even those who we really respect and admire, like Bernie Sanders or AOC or whomever that we think speaks our voice in behalf of humanity and education and some of these other things, especially Bernie's recent stuff on AI has been brilliant. But yet they don't give us the details of what I just revealed to you. We live in a socialism for the criminal class. That's the key to everything, to what we're all setting forth. And what I mean by that, and what you'll agree with because you've already set it forward, is that we do not have a law that's equal. That's self evident. I also say we don't have free markets because it's monopolistic gangsterism. And then I say that we don't have separation of powers, which is the whole purpose of the American experiment, which means that corruption rules everything. Said another way, that's tyranny, ironically, what the United States was born to basically revolt against, right? So it's all irony, but at the same time, is this like the great seer David Byrne said in our high school days? Same as it ever was. And look where my hand was, right? And so I say corruption rules everything. Millions are beginning to understand the threat of Project 2025, and I set forth that the Clean New Deal is democracy's answer. Let me ask you a question off the top there. What's your reaction to what I just laid out?
My name is Alex Boynton, and I approve this message.
You're hired. Now, look, here's how I get to it. And I'm going to use another religious parable that's kind of funny from this standpoint, because we're approaching Easter and also Passover. And Passover, of course, is the story of Moses and Exodus from tyranny, i.e., the pharaohs. But, Easter is redemption. What I'm doing is putting together the four questions, kind of like the four questions of Passover, to lead an exodus from corruption to deliver the redemption of the American dream. Sounds a little bit biblical and it sounds a little bit cultish, but it's kind of funny because it's human history. But at the same time, what I'm trying to get people to understand is the perversion of what our reality actually is. And the way I set that up is the four questions. So, Alex, what is your reaction or what is your knowledge of qualified immunity?
Um, Hard no.
Police have the ability to shoot to kill without being held accountable. Now, would you say that reflects a country where the law is supreme? It's a rhetorical, ironic question, but it's
Well, I guess depending on how you view the law, it could be argued either way. I don't think that anybody should be shooting anyone.
well, okay. I understand that, and I appreciate that. I would differ from one point. I think that the cops should have shot a whole lot of people on January 6th, which they didn't, in defending the Capitol. But here's the thing: when
No, they should have put him into labor camps.
amen, whatever the outcome was, the bottom line is,
Don't waste the flesh. Put him to work.
amen. Put them in a gulag. The bottom line is that we have the police in this country, as we're seeing played out on ICE, and we've seen Stephen Miller, the many fucking Goebbels fascists, and all this
Oh
other,
my God.
putting ICE above the law with immunity, and it's insane, right? So that's the first question. If we have qualified immunity, how then is the law supreme? It's not. That's ironic. That's self-evident. Same with the Supreme Court. What is judicial immunity? If the Supreme Court can etch a sketch the Constitution and the amendments and all of the whole process, especially the Civil War with the 14th Amendment, Section 3, Trump should have never been able to run for office because of his involvement with the insurrection, whether it was Wag the dog or he was one of the, constructs, but he's never been a mastermind of anything. Bottom line is, the question remains, why would you put the Supreme Court above the law in the event that they're literally breaking the law, which is, again, the perversion of reality, right? And then you've got what? Because of what they did, you've got this lovely photo or this lovely depiction. Love this apparatus of the emperor's new clothes. I like to add on really bad acid. All these sycophants looking at this fucking idiot that's basically getting away with the most egregious shit in the history of our country as a result of being placed above the law. And then further, the Electoral College is another way that those really clever, very rich people from the very beginning baked in rule by the minority. So in all of those situations,
Well, I mean that's a relic. That's a relic of the Civil War.
that's right, and it's also just the opposite of the baseline: life, liberty, and liberty and justice for all. Didn't we pledge allegiance to that growing up?
Well, I seem to recall that. Yeah,
Right. Okay.
but
So
also I also learned when I was growing up, one person, one vote.
well, there you go. And of course, that goes back to it. We're not a democracy when the oligarchs can put in stupid people and have them, like sheeple, herd them like, pigs being led to slaughter, to mix metaphors. The long and the short of it is, yes, we're not a democracy and we're not a capitalist system. So when you put it all together, as you can see here on the screen, going to our 80s sort of construct, it's the Rubik's Cube. We're putting together all the pieces of the puzzle so they can't piss on your head telling you it's rain. So here's the final piece of this. I'm going to give you the it's actually 10 precepts, and I want to see how you respond to them. So the first thing that I discovered, and this is the most important thing of all, that and we don't get taught this in school. And I'm not sure if you ever got this in a corollary from your independent readings or any conversations therein. But following the Great Depression, there was a gentleman by the name of Ferdinand Pecora who led an investigation to determine what created the Great Depression. Interestingly, he came out of Tammany Hall, which was as corrupt as they come. He was a Sicilian immigrant that put himself through college and law school by his bootstraps to provide for his family. In Sicilian big families, he was taking care of the grandmothers and grandfather and all
Sure,
this other
sure.
stuff. And he gets himself into the situation where he goes through Tammany Hall and he goes through the ranks pretty quickly. And ultimately, he gets chosen to find out what happened in the Great Depression, not because he was an expert in finance, it was because he was an expert in the mob. He was an expert in scams. So he comes through this process. He puts together this amazing investigation. And as a result of that investigation, which played out on three media platforms to everybody that was amidst the Great Depression, 25% unemployment in Hoovervilles and, living in soup lines and completely, in misery. And they're getting the information that Wall Street cooked the books, set everybody up to fail using this systemology of basically everything that we went through in the 2008 great financial crisis, which is basically smoke and mirrors to sell sawdust. And what they ended up coming up with was you got to create a new Glass-Steagall Act back then in 1933 to separate commercial banking from investment banking because they didn't want the system gambling with other people's money. Make sense? Because that means they're not held accountable. And they wanted to make it such that the government wouldn't bail out racketeering schemes based on speculation. And they put in the statutes, Alex, that the full faith and credit of the United States through Federal Reserve Act 13.3 is not to be providing exigent lending to commodities trades based on speculation, i.e. real estate. Does that
It seems like there's a lot of that going on these days.
has been for 14 years. And the reason
Right.
why it is the 14 years is because starting with Clinton, we got rid of all of the regulations that this set forth back in 1933, because that gave us the Securities and Exchange Act that then guided the Securities and Exchange Commission, which were the police to prevent Wall Street from lying, okay? And setting people up. For those who let's say, I don't know, commercial culture, I love Peaky Blinders, okay, among other things. And Peaky Blinders really did a great job showing the Great Depression and how it destroyed Europe based on mobs speculating with other people's money, just for an aside reference. So the bottom line is that we had the laws on the books to prevent everything that we did in 2009 after the Great Recession, to where we paid tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the guys that blew up the world. Now, does that make the world make more sense to you? Does that provide clarity? And wouldn't it make sense to you that we have to resurrect the Glass-Steagall Act to prevent criminals from stealing tens of trillions of dollars from the people's purse? Would you agree with that?
Um, I would argue this. The systems are designed to function like a well-oiled machine.
Right.
In other words, there's two classes of criminals, right? There's a guy that tries to steal a six-pack from the corner store, right?
Yep.
That's your garden variety criminal, and he spends a night in jail, right?
Sure.
And that sucks for him, but you don't steal beer. I mean, I did when I was in high school a lot, but I was good at it, so I never got caught. And then there's a different class of criminal. If you're a criminal in a suit, right, and you've got a good line of shit, then you're a different style of criminal. So you get rewarded. Oh, your crimes, like, dang it. Yeah, we'll figure out how to bail you out. Like, I
But, but,
mean,
but if you knew that, and you knew, for example, you had a choice between somebody running for Congress that would hold power to account versus somebody running for Congress who's working for the guy stealing money from you, who might you choose?
well, who do I get to choose, Patrick, is the real question.
But that's the purpose of what we're doing, because
Right.
I've got to get this information to people running for the midterms, to where we support people running on a revolution of truth. Because to your point, whether you want to call it, let's say, shenanigans, which a lot of people do, it's outright lying. But we have laws, especially racketeering statutes, that hold lying to account for the big guys, if and only if you do the investigations to bring them to account, which, of course, the Trump administration has completely dissolved because the Department of Justice and the FBI work for the Mad Magazine, Mad King, who's stealing billions, and we got rid of the inspector generals and all the people that do the investigations, which is what I've been doing for the last 14 years. And what I'm trying to illuminate in this revolution of truth
Okay,
is how this whole thing works. Go ahead.
let me leave you with this because obviously we both need to wrap it up. But I mean, we've had some very silly presidents during our lifetime, right? I mean, Ronald Reagan was a B-list actor who knew his lines and hit his marks. He wasn't driving the bus.
Right.
I mean, his highest moment was Bedtime for Bonzo, which, you know, I have to confess I didn't ever watch the movie because it, like, I mean, why? But like, but then we got George Bush the first.
Yeah.
Now he was smart. I'll give
CIA
him that.
director. And
What
his
was
grandfather,
CIA director? I
his
mean,
grandfather was Prescott Bush, who helped finance the Nazis, by the way.
oh yeah, no, an illustrious fucking family history for a certain class of people, I suppose, right?
Absolutely.
And and then we get Clinton, right? And Clinton was a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Amen, brother.
He sold a good line of shit. I voted for his ass, right?
Same.
And
Reason they call him Slick Willie, dude.
did. I mean, you got to earn a nickname like that, right?
And he's been doing it ever since. But
Well, you either have to be a really good guitar player or you have to be a fucking grifter if your nickname is Slick Willie, right?
that's right. Talking
And
about
then
card playing.
and then we get George W. Bush, right? And words alone cannot describe his incompetence, but I mean, he did okay as the owner of the Texas Rangers, right?
True, but that was the point of him being in power, was that he was completely malleable to whoever were the oligarchs.
He was a useful tool.
That's right.
And that, I mean, that was the
Responsible for most of the shit by way of Epstein, by the way, 9/11, the 2008 crisis, everything else happened under his watch. But please continue.
hmm, right. And I mean, watching him react to 9/11 was trippy as hell.
Yeah.
But it was also, in my mind, orchestrated.
We knew where the terrorist cells were. We knew exactly who was paying them. It would have been easy to thwart them, but we didn't because of asymmetric information. And then we had 25 years of war based on the Cheney, Darth Vader, Halliburton protocol, which is what I revealed in and we could talk about all sorts of other shit, but it's the military
Well,
industrial.
I mean, okay, let's just break it down to a simple set of facts, right? 19 of the 20 fucking hijackers
15 out
were
of 19 were Saudis.
right. And then they have a token guy from Yemen and whatnot, right?
Yep.
Which is Saudi light. That's
Yes.
like
And
living
right.
in St. George and saying you're a Utah,
Yeah, exactly.
right? But you are actually a Utah. And yeah, and I mean that whole thing was just an absolute grease fire. And I don't know how you found out about it. I got a phone call from my mom.
Nice.
Well, it was the most chilling and ominous phone call I've ever gotten from my mom. Because she called at 7 and she was a phone calls are from 9 to 7, right? Like kind of person. So to get a 7 a.m. call from my mom was pretty weird. And it was, we still had a landline back then. So I recognized the number and I thought it must have been a medical emergency or something.
Sure.
But I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, mom. And she's like, go turn on the TV,
Yeah.
which is something that my mom never, ever said in my entire life.
Right.
Like, we were not a TV family, we were book people.
Yeah.
We sit quietly and we read, or we listen to music, right? That was my family upbringing.
Right on.
So to hear my mom just say in the grimmest of tones, because when she sounded serious, it was a jailhouse door, right? Like,
Yeah. Hell yeah.
turn on the TV. So I went down just in time to see the second plane hit. And it was so weird because when I was like 9 years old, I had dined in Windows on the World.
I've been there many times.
I went there once, but still it was impressive. I mean, if you're up,
Absolutely. Especially
if you
standing at the bottom looking up, right?
or sitting at a window seat at the top looking at like
Yeah.
the world, right? Like, yeah,
Absolutely.
it was trippy. And I was like, wow. So I guess my
Not to
son is
mention,
going
not
to
to
see
mention it
that.
was not to mention it was in all of the TV shows that we grew up with at that time period, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
Good. It was always New York in America was the trade centers. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah. So watching the towers fall, I was like, I immediately thought, all right, this is part of a larger scam. It just is. Like, there's more here than meets the eye.
Okay, look, let me just intercept you there because we both have to split. And I want to finish this, but the fact is, this we'll save this for another day. But I want to share with you two things on top of that. Okay, so
Yeah, dude.
first of all, there was, and I think it's exactly what I just said. But we could talk about the truthers, we could talk about Inside Job, we could talk about, and I've seen all that stuff for the past 25 years, right? But what I know for a fact is that we knew where the terrorist cells were, we knew who was funding them. We had like the second it was the largest, it's somewhere in the mix of one of the largest apparatuses of budget of the United States federal government in intelligence that could have cracked that in a second, but they were prevented to. And there's been a lot of great detail on the story, Leaning Towers, yada, yada, yada. Why Cheney and Condoleezza Rice prevented the CIA and the FBI from interacting that message while all the shit went down. Okay. I think the last 25 years is reason enough to understand why it went down, especially in lieu of what we've got in Iran right now. But I want to tell you this story real quick, and I got to make it as fast as possible, and I want to finish the clean new deal. But just get a load of this. In terms of 9/11, the morning of, right? I get
Right.
a phone call from New York City. It's from Jerry Bruckheimer's office. Why? Because I had submitted a script that I created writing from the time that Clinton was being nailed on Lewinsky Gate while I was watching All Things Bin Laden, right? And then all of a sudden I decided to write this script where I called it Mayhem, where all of this crazy ass, misinformation and twists and turns and all of these other things would enable a massive terrorist strike on the United States. I get this call. I submitted it to Jerry Bruckheimer's office. I knew how to work the phones. I used to, before I came back to Utah, I was working in some of the biggest offices in Hollywood. I worked for, so I had contacts, right? So I could make shit like that happen. Bottom line was, this guy who's the director of acquisitions for Jerry Bruckheimer's office. Think about that. The largest fucking independent, not independent, but studio, ginormous.
Film juggernaut, right?
He calls me. He's like, "Hey, Pat." The same thing. I was living in Park City. I just moved back to Park City at the time. He's like, "Turn on your television, just like your mom said." I'm like, "What the fuck are you calling me so early for and saying that?" I'm like, "Are you got a decision on the script?" He's like, just do me a favor, turn on the fucking television. I turn on the television and I see the World Trader smoking. And I hear I think Katie Couric's voice came up, and they tried to make it sound like initially it was a natural disaster, like an accident, right? So I'm like, no, no.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? And next thing I know, I see, like you, the second plane hit the second tower, right? And I'm like, and there was a moment of silence, and he's like, do you think this is what you were describing? Because his claim to me initially was they couldn't do it because I was naming names. Because I named Bin Laden, I named all of the guys in the administration, especially in intelligence. And I'm like, dude, of course this is Bin Laden. And this, while mainstream television is like, hey, it could be this, it could be that, and all of a sudden here comes the second one, right? And then later, what was it, 27 minutes later or so, when the towers collapsed, I remember watching that. And we had seen movies like what, like The Day After Tomorrow, or I think even before that, it was like, what was the big movie back in 2000 maybe with Will Smith, and it was all about the UFOs that blew up the buildings. You remember in LA and New York? What the fuck?
I can't remember the title, but I
Okay,
did at
you know
some
what I'm
point
talking about.
watch
It's one of
that
the
movie.
yeah, one of the biggest movies of the last. You know, it was huge at that time. Train, no, not training. Again, I could see the poster in my mind. But anyway, that was what went through my head. But it was like, this is real, right? So I freaked out. I just got married, and I lived right at the base of Park City. I freaked out, and I ran out of my room. I got my clothes on. I hiked to the top of Park City because I just had to get the angst out. Because I had spent the previous 3 years working the script out, that I got to Bruckheimer, that they called me on the day 9/11 happened. Think about that, right? So that's really the beginning of my journey to this whole thing, from a standpoint of, to your point, it was an inside job, or there's more to the story, right? Because by the time we go through all of that in the Olympics, and then all of the FBI here and everything else, and then we get into what would ultimately become the 2008 great financial crisis, and I am putting all of this stuff together, like you, I'm like, this is fucking nuts. This is all coordinated. There's something weird going on here. So I put together the opportunity with a producer of means to try to find out answers to these stories. And that's how I became this independent journalist that would then, as a muckraker, lead us to what I'm trying to ultimately put a close on with the Clean New Deal. And I'm going to share my screen again, because on that note, and I hate to cut you off, but I promise you, we will talk about your theories and everything that you may or may not know about it. And I look forward to that. But I want to just finish with this, okay? Because this is all the collapsing towers, the collapsing American dream, the collapsing, democracy, the dream, everything that we've seen for 250 years, from the revolution to the Civil War to civil rights, World War II, all of those victories are collapsing to give us this incredible tyranny that we're in the midst of if we don't get control. And proverbially, we're all on that flight, and we can see honestly that we've been hijacked. The cockpit's been hijacked, and we're looking out our window, and we see the towers approaching. What are you going to do? Well, I'm telling you, we got to rise up as millions of us with the revolution of truth to destroy the darkness of depravity and these lies, which have always been amidst us, which undergirds everything that Alex and I are talking about. So we have to get rid of Citizens United, because dark money is basically P. Diddy raping and roofing people in the shadows, and nobody knows what the fuck's going on until it's too late. So the first is to get a new Glass-Steagall to align interests, hold power to account, never allow exigent lending to racketeering. Then we got to get rid of dark money in the shadows. But then the third part is the most important part, to education, science, technology, this, that, and the other. But everything for a government of, by, and for the people, to reconstruct what Doge has destroyed, which is, we start with 71 trillion, because I have got that. This isn't hyperbole. This is cited, and I've got it in this website, where if you take the time and look at it, America, and you understand where I came up with these figures, it's not hard. Most of this stuff's public. It's just nobody ever revealed this, and I'm revealing it. And oh yeah, by the way, to your clandestine situation, when we gave 33 trillion to Wall Street in 2009 as a result of the Congress pretending like we gave 700 billion to save the world from the liquidity trap because of a troubled assets relief program, because of toxic assets in the real estate market, we gave $33 trillion, not 700 billion. It was a smoke and mirrors. And we did it through the Federal Reserve backdooring all of this money because we're a fiat currency. But the guys that were at the head of this whole thing, get a load of this, Alex. It was Sullivan and Cromwell. Why is that important? Sullivan and Cromwell is the law firm that created the CIA. Surprise! So the bottom line is, yeah, there is a deep state America. They're in complete control for the Epstein class, and they have destroyed liberty and justice for all. And the only way to get it back, if you want Medicare for all, if you want education, if you want science, if you want a renewable energy paradigm to recreate the middle class, you don't have to ask where the money comes from. We're a fiat currency. We have Congress on the same page. If everybody gets this information and says, they're not going to piss on my head telling me it's rain anymore because they thought we were some kind of new fool, to borrow from the usual suspects and devil in a blue dress, Alex. The bottom line is the answers are the money. It's about the money. And when you're able to, as an American citizen, we go, I'm not putting somebody in Congress unless they're willing to A, arrest this administration, B, reconfigure how we spend money, because there's better ways to spend tens of trillions of dollars on people that are going to enslave us and murder us. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is not money, since that's a fiction that is
Right.
created in the mind,
Right. So
taking me back to my goat metaphor.
right.
But the thing is, there is simply no reason that the richest country in the history of civilization cannot provide basic health care
Right. Especially
or fund education
when you're getting like,
or
when you're giving trillions of dollars to freaking criminals, dude. That's insanity. That's what we're doing. But that's what they did throughout the Gilded Ages. That's what they did going back a century or a millennium, with your beautiful analogy earlier. Hey, I'm not going to send all of our golden treasure to Rome and to send it to the freaking, to the Vatican. I mean, my God, people, it's tyranny 101. You just have to understand how the system works and understand that Bernie Sanders isn't giving you this information. Dude, Schumer will never do it because Schumer's a part of it. And so there is no
well,
Bernie.
Schumer's a clown.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, that guy, whatever relevance he might have had in the world, has been gone for
We
decades.
got to reboot the entire system now because there is no time to lose. And I'm going to finish the final precepts here. Look, we got to get 13 judges on the Supreme Court to get rid of the Roberts Court. We've got
Amen.
we got to get rid of qualified immunity. Nobody is above the law. We got to get rid of judicial immunity. We got to take care of the Supreme Court. We got to get rid of executive immunity, and we got to hold Trump accountable. And then ultimately, got to get rid of the Electoral College, and we got to end institute term limits, because we can't have Pelosi and Schumer and McConnell and all these guys, serving for 30, 40 years at the expense of America, because that's tyranny. Or wait, who was our senator who served forever? I mean, it's these guys that are basically, they
Oh,
control
Orrin Hatch.
Orrin Hatch and so on and so forth. We got to have fresh blood. We got to do this, and we can come up with the term limits of what they should be. And then ultimately, we got to prohibit all insider trading in Congress. Last word on that. Think about Marjorie Taylor Greene, Alex. Marjorie Taylor Greene comes into Congress. She's an idiot. She's this total MAGA. She's all over Trump. And now she's leaving, taking the golden parachute because she's all in with the Epstein victims, supposedly, presumably. But I think congressional members get paid somewhere in the $160,000 to $180,000 range. She's making out with $27 million in 6 years. Tell me.
Well, and all of the Congress people are
Yes,
making scads of money.
that's
Like,
that's right. So
and like that's not the point of Congress.
that's the
I
tyranny.
mean, I,
That's
I
not a
think
by and for the people. So is there?
okay, so let me just say this, right? As I understood it in my naive and glossy-eyed way as a child, was that if you went to Congress, right, that means that you were there to serve the people.
Absolutely.
And that means the people, like all of them. It doesn't mean like these 10 people that are your donors or whatever.
Right.
Right? Like, no, you had a career, you did a thing, and now you're gonna, accept a decent paycheck. But like the whole concept of Congress people making, coming out with fortunes in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Pelosi, McConnell, this, that, and the other. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, that wasn't on my bingo card.
Right.
I,
Tyranny, dude. That's
I,
tyranny.
well, dude, I just had, I guess I had a naive concept that it was public service, right?
Absolutely.
And, and like I started out like you as a political science major.
Okay.
And then the darker and weirder it got, I transferred to journalism. And then I realized
What
that
I
we
did.
weren't.
I did political science and journalism too, bro.
Well, and then I was going to become an English teacher. And you know who talked me out of it?
Who?
It was my stepmom, who was a teacher. She was like, don't do it. Like, she's like, you'll be great with the kids,
Right.
but the adults will piss you off all day long.
Yeah.
Administrators, parents, school board people, like that's
Bureaucracy. Yeah.
that's your enemy, really. Like, and so I ran away and joined a rock and roll band
Oh yeah.
because then I just had to like argue with bar owners about getting paid for the gig, right?
It's a long way to top if you want to rock and roll.
It's, and I did not go to the top, but I had a good time doing it. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I still play bass guitar. It's therapeutic. It's like skiing for you, right?
Bro, you're a renaissance man, and I want you to know you matter.
Oh, thanks, dude. I I don't consider myself mattering much.
But let me ask you this. This is the final thing I got to close with then, because, bro, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Is there anything about what I laid out here that you don't find yourself in alignment, at least philosophically, until you get maybe more, insight? But given that we got to build a plane and fly it at the same time, is there anything about the Clean New Deal that gave you pause?
Other than your selection of your grandfather's hat, no.
Sorry, that's not going anywhere.
It's a dope ass hat, dude.
Right on, brother. It's legit, dude. It's my superpower, man. Plus, I went bald last year. I don't know if you know this. I got chemotherapy last year. I had skin cancer, and I had all my hair go.
Dude, my hair just left me for a younger man.
Dude, you're fantastic. So only my hat, but anyway, no. In all honesty,
No, it's a bitchin' hat, but like
but what
it
about
looks
the
like a
Clean?
good golf hat. Not
I love it. But what about the Clean New Deal? Was there anything that you disagreed with?
no.
Okay, so
And let me also say this. You need like a proper generalissimo hat. Like one of those weird like military hats that Central American dictators
dude, but
wear.
this is my thing, dude. I'm a Foo
That
Fighter.
would lend a sense of authority.
Look, I'm a
I
Foo
mean,
Fighter.
the Foo Fighters shirt works,
Right, but
but
I'm a Dropkick Murphy. I'm from the Dropkick Murphy wing of the Democratic Party, right? Look, the bottom line is I'm a pragmatist, but again, ideologically, I said this earlier. I'm a capitalist because of what I do as an entrepreneur, not because I'm a monopoly capitalist that engages in kleptocracy. Look, guys like you, I hire that are really good because we all have to make the best product, and I recognize that. And so you have fair wages that are livable if you can make that. And as a producer, if you can make money on top of that, that's the risk reward, right? So that's entrepreneurialism. But the idea of the government, we are so huge as an economy. We are like I tell socialists all the time, look, nobody's stopping you from being a owner of a brewery to create a co-op, or let's just say, and I'm using extreme examples, but let's say a dispensary, right? People that tend to like to think that way go. Although I will say most of the marijuana guys are really hellacious, hella capitalists. But the rest of them, you can create co-ops. Nobody's stopping you from being a socialist, right? The bottom line is the government's so big that we have We have enough room to be malleable for social safety nets, which are absolutely imperative. And then, of course, you know, a free market. They all work together. The only difference to everything is the law. If the law holds power to account and we've got Congress making good decisions and we're educating our young people and we're building a manifest liberty and justice for all, where the government is up by and for the people, and people serve with humility and service to the people, that's the answer. It's the answer's always been there. What we can
Yeah,
go
this
ahead.
isn't hard.
This isn't hard. It's not rocket science. It's racketeering. And what I'm telling people is, you keep asking about the money, and for everybody who's a progressive Dem on the let's say Mondani slash Bernie side of the fence, Bernie has really failed us from this perspective. I love what Bernie does most of the time. I love what he has to say. I love what he stands for. I love where he's coming from on AI. I love his position on the working class and so on and so forth. But it's not like, I don't know if you remember this about me, but I like to get in the mix with people sometimes, right? I like to battle. And the bottom line
Right.
is, when you battle, right? When you take fucking powerful people on and complicit fuckers in this conformity of hierarchy of power and that sort of thing, you got to outwit these motherfuckers. You can't just beat them all the time physically. You got to outwit them. And so you got to think about this shit. I've been doing that my whole life. So the thing is, here at this stage of the game, I got the information, Alex. I encourage everybody out there, anybody who challenges me, if you're a PhD economist from any Ivy League institution, come on and challenge me publicly. Same with any legal expert. I work with some of the top legal experts in the history of the fucking world. And these guys held criminality to account for our whole lives. And now they have been sidelined. And the bottom line is, people, systems work as they're designed. If you want a plane to fly, there's a way it's got to fly. If you want an elevator to work, it's got to work a certain way. If you want to build lighting on a set, there's a certain way things work. If you want a country of by and for the people, you got to be here. You can't be with people who don't give you the details, because without the details, can you actually prove a case in a criminal court of law? Alex, can you without the details and the evidence?
No, no. Doing your homework is important. And I think most of us learned that early in elementary school.
Exactly. It's elementary, my dear Watson. So to close, I welcome you, and I hope to see you on Saturday at our booth with your son at No Kings. And I hope to see everybody out there during No Kings around the country. I hope 15, 20, 30 million of us will see. But I promise you, people, if you can understand the Clean New Deal, if you can like, subscribe, and share, you will become a nuclear reaction vector to the big bang of truth that this delivers. And I'll tell you this in closing, and I know you'll appreciate this because of your satire and your wit. Think about how ironic is this. For those that are religious, the first words in the Bible are "let there be light," right? So I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, I'm a lot of things, but at the same time, I'm not fundamentalist by any stretch, right? But I find that interesting from the standpoint of cosmology, universal construct, and the idea of what we know from physics is the Big Bang is simply that. But the thing about light overcoming darkness is it has to happen through the supernova of energy. Those are the things that I'm trying to correlate to the American people. If you
Try stumbling through your house at 2 in the morning with no lights on.
That's right. Or, of course, wanting to pursue an acting or an acting or a singing career and happening to wind up on Weinstein couch or in a P Diddy fucking train, right? I mean, guys, it's not hard.
Fortunately, that never happened to
It's
me.
right. It's a well,
I
and
never got sodomized by P. Diddy, dude.
dude, you know how many times I got invited to P. Diddy parties during Sundance, and I never made it because of one thing or another. But I always wanted to go. But thank God I didn't, man, because that could have been me. But holy shit. All right, listen, man. I want to thank you for your 2 hours of time this morning. You have been so wonderful to connect with, and I love your sense of humor. You're always welcome to come back. I hope we can make this a recurring thing, to be quite honest with you. But
Well,
Alex,
it was a pleasure, Pat.
thank you, and everybody. Alex Boynton, one of do you have any fond nicknames that you appreciate that people have fomented over the years?
No,
I'm gonna call.
Alex seems to work.
Okay, look, yeah, but you know what comes to mind for me, honestly? Don
Let's hear it.
Don Quixote.
Dude, I have tilted at more than one windmill. I will say that.
And you're clever as hell, man. Thank you.
Well, and you are tilting at windmills as well. And if enough of us do it, one day we'll kill that fucking windmill.
There's two columns of our soul. There's character, complicity, courage, and integrity. And there's complicity, hypocrisy, duplicity. The way you go is going to save the world, or it's going to take us further into darkness. On that note, onwards and upwards. Thank you to my friend Alex Boynton, and we'll see you at No Kings. Onwards and upwards, ladies and gentlemen. Alex, I'll be in touch with details about this weekend. Okay.
Peace out.
All right.
Should I bring coffee to your booth
That would be wonderful, dude.
in case
Absolutely.
you want to get even more jacked up?
That's right. Or PBRs for after the fact.
Or C, all of the above.
Amen. And I'll bring some PBRs as well. All right.
All right.
All the
Have
best.
a great rest of your day. It was a pleasure, man.
Thank you. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. 2 hours went by like that. Thank you so much, Alex. I'll talk to you later. Be well.
My pleasure. Thank you.